beneath a sky bruised with twilight, where the jagged peaks of the Duath clawed at the heavens, Aeloria, loremaster of Gondor, stood upon the scarred plains of Mordor. The black gate lay in ruins, its iron fangs shattered by the hammers of men, and the fires of Mount Doom had dwindled to cold embers. Yet as I gazed across the desolate waste, a whisper rode the wind, a faint guttural echo like the cry of a forgotten soul. It spoke of the Orcs, those wretched spawn of darkness whose blades had carved terror into the heart of Middle-earth. What became of them when Sauron's shadow fled? Did they perish in the ruin of their master? Or did some linger hiding in the hollows of the world, their hearts torn between malice and a fleeting dream of peace? In the annals of the Third Age, the Orcs were the iron fist of evil, marching under the banners of Morgoth and Sauron, their eyes aglow with hatred. From the shadowed halls of Dol Guldur to the deeps of Moria, they were a scourge upon the free peoples. Their guttural cries haunted the forests of Mirkwood, their axes felled the trees of Lothlorien, and their fires burned bright in the forges of Isengard. But when the One Ring was unmade and the Dark Tower crumbled, their tale did not end. It slipped into shadow. Were they doomed to extinction, their kind erased from the earth? Or could any, twisted though they were, have sought redemption, a path to peace in a world that reviled them? Join me, travellers of Arda, as we embark on a journey through the mists of time, from the starlit waters of Cuiviénen to the blood-soaked fields of the Pelennor, from the iron pits of Utumno to the silent caves of the Misty Mountains. This is no mere recounting of battles, but a quest to understand the nature of those born from darkness. We shall tread the paths of history where the Orcs saga unfolds a tale of corruption, war, and perhaps a spark of hope lost to the ages. As we unravel their fate, we shall ponder questions that linger in the heart of Middle-earth. Can evil be undone? Can a creature of malice find light? Come, let us begin, for the winds of history await, and the story of the Orcs calls to us from the shadows. In the elder days, when the world was yet unmarred, Ilúvatar, the One, sang into being the children of his heart. By the starlit mere of Cuiviénen the Quendi, the Elves awoke, their voices weaving songs of wonder, their eyes drinking in the silver fires of the heavens. They were the firstborn fair and immortal, bound to the fate of Arda. Their laughter echoed through the glades, a symphony of light in a world still young. The waters of Cuiviénen shimmered under the stars, reflecting the joy of the Quendi as they danced and sang, their hearts unburdened by the shadows that would soon come. They named the stars. Varda's jewels they called them, and wove tales of their beauty, their footsteps light upon the earth. The world was a canvas of possibility, and the Elves were its first artists. Their lives a melody in Ilúvatar's grand design. But in the north, where shadows pooled like ink in the hollows of the earth, a malevolent will stirred Morgoth. Once Melkor, the mightiest of the Ainur, gazed upon the Elves with a heart consumed by envy. In the halls of Ea, he had sung discord into Ilúvatar's music, seeking to bend creation to his will. His voice had clashed with the harmony of the Ainur, a rebellion against the One. Now, seeing the Quendi radiant and free, he yearned to create as Ilúvatar did, to shape progeny in his image to rival the light of the firstborn. Yet the flame, imperishable, the divine spark of life, lay beyond his grasp, held solely by the One. Morgoth's power was vast. Mountains rose at his command, seas churned at his will, but it was a power to twist, not to make anew. So he turned to a darker art corruption, a blasphemy that would scar Middle-earth for ages to come. Picture a young elf Lorien straying from the safety of Cuiviénen, his heart alight with the joy of discovery. His golden hair gleamed under the starlight, his eyes bright with the wonder of the world. By the mere he had sung with his kin, his voice rising in harmony, a song of the stars that had welcomed their awakening. He had danced with his sister Elinde, their laughter mingling with the ripples of the water. But a restless spirit drew him beyond the glades, a desire to see the world beyond the songs. The stars were his guide, their silver glow casting long shadows across the earth. He wandered far, his footsteps light upon the grass, whispering tales to himself. of the heavens, what lies beyond the hills? He mused, his heart soaring with dreams. Unaware he crossed into the lands where Morgoth's influence held sway, where the light of the stars grew faint. The air grew heavy, a chill seeping into his bones. The stars dimmed as if veiled by a malevolent hand. Suddenly from the darkness came Morgoth's minions, creatures of claw and fang, their eyes glinting with malice, their forms twisted mockeries of life. Lorien's cries were swallowed by the night as he was seized, his slender form bound in chains of cold iron. He struggled, calling for Elinde for his kin, but the stars offered no answer. He was borne to the iron halls of Utumno, Morgoth's fortress of dread, a place where hope withered and died. The gates forged of black iron screamed as they closed their wail, a prelude to the horrors within Lorien's world of light faded, replaced by the suffocating darkness of Morgoth's domain. Utumno was a nightmare wrought in stone and fire. Its towers hewn from the bones of the earth loomed like the teeth of a great beast. Beneath the surface, caverns stretched like the veins of a dying creature, their walls slick with damp and despair. The air was thick with the stench of sulphur blood and molten iron, the clamour of forges ringing like a dirge. Torches cast grotesque shadows, their flickering light revealing chained figures, other Quendi, their faces etched with anguish. The screams of the elves echoed through the deeps, mingling with the laughter of Morgoth's lieutenants, who wielded whips of flame. Lorien was thrown into a pit, his wrists bound, his spirit battered by the weight of Morgoth's presence. He clung to memories of Cuiviénen, the shimmer of the water, the laughter of Elinde, the songs of his kin, but they faded like stars at dawn, eroded by the relentless cruelty of his captors. Day by day, Morgoth's sorcery took hold, a hammer reshaping Lorien's essence. His fair form was broken, his golden hair fell away in clumps, his skin grew coarse and mottled, scarred by the touch of iron and flame. His voice once a melody twisted into a guttural snarl, each word a wound. His eyes once bright with wonder burned with a cruel, unnatural light, reflecting the malice poured into his soul. Morgoth's will was a crucible, turning grace to grotesquerie, wisdom to cunning, love to hatred. Lorien fought his spirit, clinging to fragments of light, but the darkness was unrelenting. When at last he emerged from the pits, he was no longer Lorien, but an orc. A perversion of Ilúvatar's design, a creature of pain, rage and unending torment. His memories of Cuiviénen were buried, his heart a furnace of hatred, his existence a mockery of the elf he had been. Thus were the orcs born, as the Silmarillion recounts, from the ruin of the Quendi, a blasphemy that scarred the world. Morgoth's corruption was not merely physical, it was a violation of the soul, a twisting of the light that Ilúvatar had kindled. Countless elves suffered Lorien's fate, their numbers swelling, Morgoth's armies their cries lost in the deeps of Utumno. The Quendi who remained by Cuiviénen wept for their lost kin, their songs turning to laments. But the world had changed, and the shadow of Morgoth grew ever longer. The orcs born of this violation were not new creations, but shattered remnants. Their elven heritage buried beneath layers of malice, their lives a testament to the power of evil to destroy, but never to create. Yet what of their nature? Some loremasters pondering their elven origins believed the orcs might share the immortality of their kin bound to Arda until its end. In the halls of Gondor, I have read ancient texts that suggest otherwise. In the Silmarillion, it is written that orcs were diminished, their lives fleeting compared to the Quendi. They could be slain, their bodies broken by blade or arrow. They succumbed to disease, their forms frail and susceptible to the ills of the world. Their spans were short, even when measured against men of noble lineage, such as the Edain Morgoth's creations were but shadows, their existence a mockery of the light they once knew. Unlike the Quendi, who walked undying beneath the stars, the orcs were mortal, their spirits bound to a brief and wretched existence, their bodies crumbling under the weight of their corruption. As I, Aeloria, trace these ancient tales in the libraries of Minas Tirith, I am struck by the tragedy of the orcs' making. They were not born of Ilúvatar's will, but of Morgoth's hatred, their lives a wound upon Arda. In the Ainulindale, Ilúvatar declared that no theme could be played that did not have its source in him, and even Morgoth's discord was woven into the music of creation. Could the Orcs then be part of Ilúvatar's plan, their corruption a thread in the tapestry of Arda? Or were they an aberration, a defiance of the One's will? These questions haunt me as I turn the pages of history, for the Orcs' tale is not merely one of corruption, but of a loss that echoes through the ages. Did they in their deepest hearts remember the stars of Cuiviénen? Did some fragment of their elven heritage linger buried beneath layers of malice? Or were they wholly lost, their souls consumed by the darkness that birthed them? The answers lie not in their making, but in their deeds, for the Orcs would soon become the scourge of Middle-earth, their blades honed for war. Their tale is a shadow cast across the ages, a reminder of the cost of envy and the fragility of light. To understand their fate, we must follow their path through the ages to the fires of the War of the Ring, where their strength was tested and broken. The Orcs, born in the pits of Utumno, would march under the banners of Sauron Morgoth's heir, their lives shaped by the will of a new master. Let us journey now to the battlefields of the Third Age, where the Orcs' saga unfolds amidst the clash of steel and the cries of the fallen, their destiny hanging in the balance. As the Third Age waned, the Orcs stood as the iron fist of Sauron, the heir of Morgoth's malice. From the blackened walls of Dol Guldur to the deeps of Moria, their numbers swelled, their blades glinting with the promise of blood. They were no mere rabble, but a host bred for war, their guttural cries echoing through the forests and mountains of Middle-earth. In the glades of Lothlorien, they clashed with the Elves of Galadriel, their axes hewing at the golden mallarns, only to be thrown back by the power of the Lady's Ring. Thrice they assailed the Golden Wood, and thrice they were repelled, their bodies piling beneath the ancient trees. In Mirkwood, Thranduil's forces met them in fierce battle, and the Orcs fell like leaves before a storm, their blood staining the roots of the forest. At Helm's Deep, the Uruk-hai of Saruman, bred for strength and ferocity, were shattered by the Rohirrim and the wrath of the Ents, their siege broken in a tide of hooves and branches, and at the Black Gate, as Aragorn led the hosts of the west, the Orcs of Mordor faced their final stand, their banners trembling before the might of men. Imagine two Orcs, Grishnak and Urgok, crouched in the shadow of a jagged rock near the Morannon, their eyes darting across the battlefield. The air was thick with the stench of sweat and iron, the ground slick with blood. Torches cast flickering shadows, and the distant cries of men and elves carried on the wind. "This war's a curse." Grishnak growled, his voice rough as gravel. "Sauron's whip drives us to death, and for what? I'd rather slip away, find a cave where no man or elf can hunt us, where we can live as we please." Urgok spat his fangs, glinting in the torchlight. "Fools talk. Without the Dark Lord, we're nothing. But if we win, there'll be loot aplenty and no more masters to chain us." Their words, as recorded in The Lord of the Rings, reveal a truth even in their servitude. Some Orcs dreamed of freedom, if only for selfish ends. Their hearts, though steeped in malice, yearned for a life beyond the lash of their master. Grishnak's gaze lingered on the horizon where the fires of Mount Doom burned red. He remembered the tales of Morgoth's fall whispered in the barracks of Mordor, how the Orcs had survived, scattering to the mountains, raiding and plundering for sport. Could they do the same if Sauron fell? Urgok, ever loyal to the Eye, scoffed at the thought. "The Dark Lord's power is eternal," he snarled. "We fight or we die." Yet beneath his bravado a flicker of doubt stirred. The men of the West were relentless, their swords gleaming with a light that stung the Orcs' eyes. The Elves, with their ancient grace, struck with precision that left no room for error. Even the trees, roused by the Ents, seemed to march against them. The world itself conspired to crush Sauron's host. The Orcs' strength was formidable, but their defeats were catastrophic. At Dol Guldur, Galadriel threw down its walls, cleansing the forest of its shadow, as the Lord of the Rings recounts. The Orcs who assailed Lothlorien and Mirkwood were driven back, their hosts broken by the resolve of the Elves. Celeborn, led the forces of Lorien across the Anduin, and the pits of Dol Guldur were laid bare, its darkness purged. In Mirkwood, Thranduil's warriors fought with a ferocity born of centuries, their arrows finding the hearts of orcs with unerring aim. The forest, once choked with shadow, breathed free once more, its glades cleansed of the enemy's taint. At Helm's Deep, Saruman's Uruk-hai, towering and relentless, breached the deeping wall, their battering rams shaking the earth. But the Rohirrim, led by Theoden, charged with the fury of a storm, their horns sounding the dawn of victory. The Ents, ancient guardians of the forest, descended upon Isengard, their roots tearing stone asunder. None of Saruman's hosts survived, their bodies buried beneath the rubble, their ambition crushed by the wrath of nature and men. The Orcs' defeat at Helm's Deep was a wound from which Saruman's power never recovered, a testament to the resilience of the Free Peoples. In the Battle of Dale, the Orcs and Easterlings clashed with the men of Erebor, and Dale their forces united under King Brand and King Dain Ironfoot. The battle was fierce, the air thick with the clang of steel and the cries of the fallen. The Orcs fought with savage desperation, their numbers bolstered by the Easterlings' discipline. But the men of the north were unyielding, their resolve forged in the shadow of the lonely mountain. The price was high. Brand and Dain fell, their lives given for victory, but the forces of darkness were vanquished, their banners trampled underfoot. The Orcs' defeat in Dale was a blow to Sauron's northern ambitions, a sign that even his vast armies could not prevail. At the Black Gate, the Orcs of Mordor stood as Sauron's final bastion, their ranks swollen with trolls, beasts, and spell-enslaved creatures. Aragorn, Gandalf, and the captains of the West marched against them, their banners bright with the sigils of Gondor and Rohan. The Orcs fought with a ferocity born of fear, their eyes fixed on the eye that watched from Barad-dûr. But as the One Ring was unmade, cast into the fires of Mount Doom, Sauron's will faltered. The Orcs' ranks dissolved into chaos, their courage crumbling with their master's power. Some fled their footsteps pounding the ash of Mordor, others stood only to fall beneath the swords of men. The Black Gate became a graveyard, the Orcs' final stand, a fleeting echo of their former might. Yet their dreams of freedom, as voiced by Grishnak, were in vain. The forces of Sauron crumbled, their armies scattered like ash on the wind. The Orcs' defeats were not mere setbacks, but an unraveling of their purpose. They were bred for war, bound to the will of a master, and without Sauron, they were adrift. Could they, as Grishnak hoped, find a cave to hide in, a life beyond the battlefield? Or were they doomed to perish, their kind, unfit for a world of peace? As we stand at the crossroads of history, travelers pause and ponder what drives a creature born of malice. Is it only hatred? Or could there be a spark of something more, a desire for freedom, however twisted? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us continue this journey together, for the tale of the Orcs is far from ended. The Orcs saga now turns to the moment of Sauron's fall, when the world shifted beneath their feet. Did they perish in the ruin of their master? Or did some flee seeking refuge in the dark places of Middle-earth? Let us journey now to the ashen plains of Mordor, where the Orcs faced a world without their lord, their fates hanging in the balance. When the One Ring was cast into the fires of Mount Doom, Sauron's dominion shattered like glass under a hammer. The Dark Tower fell, its stones crumbling into dust, and the Orcs, bound to their master's will, were cast into chaos. As the Lord of the Rings recounts, some, gripped by despair, turned their blades upon themselves, their blood staining the ashen plains of Mordor. Their cries echoed through the ruins, a cacophony of fear and rage, as if the earth mourned the loss of its dark lord. Others, driven by madness, plunged into pits, seeking escape from a world bereft of Sauron's command, their bodies swallowed by the cracks of the earth. But a resilient few chose a different path, fleeing into the dark places of Middle-earth caves in the Misty Mountains, forgotten tunnels in Moria, or the shadowed vales of the north, where no man or elf would follow. Picture a band of Orcs led by one called Karag, huddled in a cavern beneath the Misty Mountains. The air was thick with the stench of fear, the walls slick with damp. Torches cast flickering shadows, their light barely piercing the gloom. Karag's eyes burned like coals as he addressed his ragged kin. "Sauron's gone," he snarled, his voice echoing in the dark. "The eye is blind, the tower dust. But we live. We can carve our own path, raid the lands of men, build our own stronghold, answer to no master." His words stirred the others, their growls rising like a storm, but a smaller orc. Zerg shook his head, his voice trembling, raiding. "That's what got us here. I say we hide, live quiet, far from their blades. The world's changed, Karag. We can't fight forever." Their voices clashed, a microcosm of the orc's plight, to fight on in hatred or to seek survival in obscurity. Karag paced the cavern, his clawed hand gripping a rusted sword. He had fought at the Black Gate, seen the men of the West charge with swords that gleamed like starlight. He had watched his kin fall, their bodies trampled under hooves, their cries drowned by the horns of Rohan. Sauron's will had driven them afire in their blood. But now that fire was gone, Karag remembered the tales of Morgoth's fall, whispered in the barracks of Mordor. The orcs had survived then, scattering to the mountains, raiding villages, plundering for sport. Could they do the same now? He envisioned a stronghold in the peaks, a place where orcs ruled free from the lash of a master. But Zerg's words gnawed at him. The men of Gondor were relentless, their cities growing, their scouts ever watchful. The elves, though fewer, still guarded their realms with unyielding grace. Even the dwarves reclaiming their halls would not suffer orcs to live. Zerg sat against the wall, his eyes fixed on the flickering torchlight. He was no warrior like Karag, but a scavenger, a survivor. He had slipped through battles, hiding in shadows, stealing scraps to live. He had seen the world beyond Mordor, the green fields of Rohan, the golden woods of Lorien, the towering spires of Minas Tirith. It was a world that hated orcs, that hunted them like beasts. But Zerg dreamed of a quiet life, a cave by a stream where he could fish and sleep without fear. "We're not like men," he muttered. "They build, we destroy. Maybe it's time we stop." Karag's laughter was harsh, a bark that silenced the cavern. "Stop, we're orcs. Zerg, hatred's our blood. We fight or we die." Yet beneath his scorn, a flicker of doubt stirred. Could an orc live without war? Could they find a place in a world that despised them? In Moria, the orcs who lingered after the fall of Durin's Bane met an uncertain fate. The peoples of Middle-earth offers a faint glimpse of their end as the dwarves, led by an heir of Durin, returned to reclaim the halls. The ringing of hammers and the harping of harps filled the deep places, driving out the shadows. The orcs, if any remained, were swept away, their presence erased from the chronicles of Khazad-dûm. The dwarves brought light to Moria, their forges blazing their songs, echoing through the mines. The orcs, creatures of darkness, could not endure in such a place. Their lairs were scoured, their bones buried beneath the stone, their legacy reduced to whispers in the deep. In Mordor, the surviving orcs scattered, their once mighty hosts reduced to bands of wanderers, hiding in holes and lightless places, far from hope. As Tolkien writes in The Lord of the Rings, the creatures of Sauron, orc or troll or beast, spell-enslaved, ran hither and thither mindless, their purpose lost with their master. Some fled to the slag hills of the Morgai, others to the desolate wastes of Nuan. They were shadows of their former selves, their strength broken, their numbers dwindling. Yet the orcs had endured before, after Morgoth's defeat in the First Age. They were capable of evil unbidden ravaging for sport, as Tolkien notes in his letters. In the Misty Mountains, small bands of orcs might have carved out lairs, raiding villages or scavenging in secret. Their numbers dwindled, their strength faded, but their hatred burned on a legacy of Morgoth's corruption. Karag's band was one such remnant, a flicker of defiance in a world that sought their end. They hunted by night, stealing from travellers, avoiding the eyes of men. But the Fourth Age was dawning, and the realms of Gondor and Rohan grew. Scouts roamed the mountains, their torches piercing the dark villages, fortified their walls, their militias armed with steel. The orcs' raids grew riskier, their losses heavier. Zerg's dream of a quiet life seemed ever more distant, a fantasy born of desperation. Carag, too, felt the weight of their plight. His stronghold was a dream, but the reality was a cave, cold and cramped, where hunger gnawed at their bellies. The Orcs were survivors, but survival was not life. Could these remnants have formed tribes perpetuating their race in the shadows, in the Misty Mountains perhaps, or the far reaches of the north where men seldom ventured? But their hatred was their undoing. Each raid drew attention. Each theft stoked the wrath of men. The Orcs were not builders, as Zerg had said, but destroyers, their nature bound to conflict. Their tribes, if they formed, were fleeting their lairs, discovered their kin hunted. The world of the Fourth Age had no place for Orcs, no mercy for creatures born of malice. Yet as the cavern fell silent, Carag and Zerg faced a question. Could any among them, freed from Sauron's lash, seek a different path? Could a creature born of darkness harbour a spark of light? To answer, we must delve deeper into the heart of their nature and ponder the possibility of redemption in a world that offered them none. The Orcs' flight was a desperate bid for survival, but their saga was not yet ended. Let us journey now to the quiet of the Fourth Age, where the Orcs' fate was sealed, and a final question lingered. Could an Orc find peace? In the quiet of the Fourth Age, as the realms of men prospered and the Elves sailed west, a question lingered in the halls of Gondor. Could an Orc born of corruption harbour a spark of goodness? Tolkien, in his letter 153, muses on this writing. By accepting their making, even Orcs would become part of the world which is God's and ultimately good. Yet he adds, they were naturally bad, their hearts steeped in sin, begotten of Morgoth's greatest abuses. The Orcs were not creatures of Ilúvatar's design, but of Morgoth's hatred, their lives a wound upon ardour. Could such a creature twisted by evil find a path to redemption? To explore this, imagine an Orc named Thrak, weary of war, who wandered from the shadows of the Misty Mountains to the borders of Gondor, seeking a life beyond bloodshed. Thrak was no warrior like Carag, nor a dreamer like Zerg. He was a survivor, his body scarred from battles he had fled, his heart heavy with the weight of centuries. He had fought at the Black Gate, seen the fires of Mount Doom flare as the One Ring was unmade. When Sauron fell, Thrak ran his footsteps pounding the ash of Mordor until he reached the Misty Mountains. There he joined Carag's band, but their raids filled him with dread. Each theft, each cry of a slain traveller echoed the torment of Utumno, the pits where his kind were born. Thrak longed for silence, for a place where his blade could rust, where his heart could rest. Under a moonlit sky he laid down his rusted sword and approached a village of men, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I seek no blood," he rasped, his voice rough but earnest. The villagers, seeing only a monster, drove him away with stones, their cries of fear drowning his pleas. Thrak fled, his heart torn between rage and sorrow, a flicker of hope extinguished. Compare Thrak to Gollum, another creature twisted by evil yet touched by pity. Gollum's struggle, as seen in The Lord of the Rings, showed that even the fallen could yearn for light, though his redemption was incomplete. He was Smeagol once, a hobbit-like creature corrupted by the One Ring's power. Frodo's kindness stirred memories of that lost self, but Gollum's malice prevailed, his fate sealed in the fires of Mount Doom. Could an Orc like Gollum seek atonement? Tolkien's writings offer no clear answer, only hints. The dialogue of Gorbag and Shagrat, dreaming of a life like old times without masters, suggests a desire for freedom. However selfish, if we get a chance, you and me'll slip off and set up somewhere on our own. Gorbag said his words, a fleeting glimpse of hope. But their vision was of looting and hiding, not of peace, their hearts bound to the malice of their making. Imagine Thrak again, years later, dwelling alone in a cave by a forgotten stream in the foothills of the Misty Mountains. He carved crude figures in the stone stars, perhaps, or the faint memory of Cuiviénen buried deep in his soul. He harmed no one, living off roots and fish, his days quiet, but haunted by the screams of his past. One night, a child of men, lost in the wild, stumbled upon his cave. Thrak's first instinct was to snarl to drive the intruder away, but the child's eyes, wide with fear, stirred something in him. A memory of Eilinde, the sister of Lorien, long lost to Utumno's pits. Instead of striking, Thrak offered the child a fish, his clawed hand trembling. He pointed the way home, his voice a low growl. The child fled, but the tale spread a whisper in the villages of Gondor, an orc who did no evil, who spared a life. Such a story, though unrecorded in Tolkien's works, aligns with his belief that evil cannot wholly extinguish good. In the Silmarillion, the orcs are described as wholly corrupted, their elven heritage buried beneath layers of malice. But Tolkien's theology, rooted in the Ainulin Dale, holds that all things are part of Ilúvatar's plan, even those born of Morgoth's discord. No theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me. Ilúvatar declared, weaving even evil into the music of creation. Could Thrak's act of mercy be a thread in that tapestry, a spark of light in a heart of darkness? Or was it an anomaly, a fleeting moment drowned by the weight of his kind's nature? The world of men, however, had little mercy for orcs. As Gondor and Rohan expanded, their scouts scoured the mountains, their torches piercing the dark villages fortified their walls, their militias armed with steel forged in the forges of Minas Tirith. Any orcish settlements were hunted down, their lairs razed, their kin slain. Thrak's cave, if discovered, would be no sanctuary. The men of the Fourth Age saw orcs as monsters, their hatred a legacy of centuries of war. The tale of Thrak's mercy, if it reached their ears, was dismissed as a lie, a trick of the enemy. The orcs' fate was sealed, their kind driven to extinction as the realms of men grew. The absence of orcs in the new shadow. Tolkien's abandoned sequel suggests they faded from Middle-earth, their race unable to endure in an age dominated by men. Yet, as I, Aeloria, ponder Thrak's tale, I wonder, was there ever a place for such a creature in the world? Could pity, as Gandalf taught Frodo, have spared even an orc? In The Lord of the Rings, Gandalf spoke of Gollum's role in the ring's destruction, a role born of pity. My heart tells me that he has some part to play, yet for good or ill, he said. Could an orc like Gollum have a part to play, however small? Tolkien's Letter 153 cautions against deeming orcs irredeemably bad, noting that such a judgment goes too far. But he also states they are naturally bad, their corruption deep and enduring. Thrak's act of mercy, if true, was a miracle, a defiance of his nature, but it was not enough to change his kind's fate. The orcs' end was likely brutal, their hatred meeting the steel of those they had wronged. Their tribes, if they formed, were fleeting, their lairs discovered, their kin hunted. The Fourth Age was an age of men, its light too bright for creatures of shadow. But Thrak's tale lingers a question unanswered. Could an orc find peace, or was their redemption a dream beyond reach? As we stand at the threshold of the Fourth Age, the Orcs' saga draws to its close, their fate, a shadow fading into history. As I, Aeloria, stand upon the slopes of the Misty Mountains, the wind carries no echo of orcish cries. The Fourth Age belongs to men and the orcs. If any remain, are but ghosts in the deep places. The chronicles are silent, their pages blank where the orcs' final days should be written. Were they hunted to extinction, their lairs razed by the expanding realms of Gondor and Rohan, or did they dwindle, their hatred consuming them until none remained? The signs are clear. The orcs born of Morgoth's corruption could not endure in a world cleansed of Sauron's shadow. Their end, as the Lord of the Rings implies, was a purging of Middle-earth, a necessary act to heal the wounds of ages past. The men of Gondor, their cities gleaming with white stones, scoured the mountains, their swords swift and merciless. The Rohirrim, their hooves thundering across the plains, left no refuge for the enemy. The orcs' time was ended, their kind erased from the earth. Yet I cannot help but wonder, was their end justice, or a tragedy born of a world that offered no mercy to the irredeemable? The tale of Thrak, the orc who spared a child, haunts me. Was he an anomaly, a flicker of light in a heart of darkness, or a sign that even orcs could seek peace? Tolkien's words in Letter 153 linger. Even orcs would become part of the world which is God's and ultimately good. But the world of men had no place for orcs, no pity for creatures born of malice. Their extinction was a cleansing, but it was also a loss, a reminder of the cost of evil and the fragility of redemption. The Orcs saga is a shadow cast across history, a wound that has healed but left a scar. The tale of the Orcs is ended, but its questions linger. Could a creature of darkness have found light as Thrax sought, or were they doomed by their making? Travellers of Arda, share your thoughts below. What do you believe became of the Orcs? Could any have walked a path of peace, or was their fate sealed in the pits of Utumno? Subscribe to join us on future journeys through the realms of Middle-earth, where every tale holds secrets waiting to be unveiled. Until we meet again, farewell, and may the stars of Ilúvatar guide your path.